Hello and what's up everybody, Thunderbob here, and tonight we're talking about some Diablo 2 Resurrected news. Perhaps the biggest news since the beta starting and finding out about ladder items and live and all those changes. Blizzard has released some important information on several upcoming changes. This is mostly about ladder, about the next patch, which is going to include information on ladder ranked play, class and balance changes, mercenary and new rune words, and then a stream that's going to be on tomorrow with Mr. Llama SC, which I'm excited about. This post that they put up today, I'll have a link down below, is really kind of high level. They're just talking about the sort of changes that are coming. They're not getting into flat numbers. They're not getting into how big of the buffs and any specifics on like the mercenary changes or the rune words, but I did want to talk through a couple of these points briefly. There's also going to be a stream on tomorrow, like I mentioned, with Mr. Llama SC, which I'm excited to check out. Though I think we're probably not going to see the hard numbers that we want to see. We're not going to see the specific skill changes. We might see like some examples, and I think it's more going to be like a philosophical talk about why they're deciding to change things and what they're deciding to change. And we'll probably get the actual information we're seeking in the patch notes that come when the PTR starts up. But I did want to go through this just quickly. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk about, my thoughts on the proposed changes, what changes I think they might make, or I hope they might make. And then after they come out, maybe we'll see how close I am or how far off I am. So first off, we're going to skim through here. I've already read this a couple of times, actually, at work, just thinking about it. So prepare to seek your glory. Ladder rank play is arriving early next year. Our priority for ladder rank has always been to have a smooth experience. The competitive nature demands stability. Blah, 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 yeah. So it's getting better and better. We're having less downtime, less queues. Actually, I haven't seen a queue in quite a while. So I feel like they're getting close. And now it seems like they want to make changes to allow the ladder to be kind of new and exciting. We can't wait for you to begin to climb, but for now, let's dive into some exciting detail. So there's 4 different ladders, just like in classic Diablo 2. You got standard and a hardcore, and then standard expansion and a hardcore expansion. Really no changes if you're a longtime player. Kind of know what to expect here. Now, for the first time, players will have a chance to unlock a host of new rune words in the ladder system. To be clear, these rune words have never existed in the game before. They will not be accessible in non-ladder play like previous sets of ladder-only rune words in the original Diablo 2 experience. At the end of the ladder season, players who successfully made these rune words will have their ladder character be moved into a non-ladder version of the game. So I kind of hope they clarify this, because these two sentences seem to be at odds with each other. To be clear, these rune words have never existed, and they will not be accessible in non-ladder play. Does that just mean that you can't make them in non-ladder, but you can make them in ladder, and then when the ladder ends, you'll transition to the non-ladder, keeping those items? Because the way this is written almost sounds like those items could poof. I'm not totally convinced that this isn't just me reading too much into it. I'm hoping, that when the ladder ends, anyone who's crafted them during that ladder season, they will transition to non-ladder. And I'd actually like them to add a handful of new rune words each ladder season. I've mentioned this before, and I think it would be nice to have a full season where those items are limited to that ladder, but then maybe one season behind you introduce that set of items to the non-ladder realms, meaning you could craft them there. And then you have, 5 to 10 new ladder rune words the next season, and then when that season ends, you transition them back. That was my thought. I kind of hope they go with something like that, but if not, it'll give incentive for people to play ladder, because that would be the only way you could ever get those rune words. And that's assuming that they do follow you. The wording here is just, there's enough ambiguity here that I'm not 100% on this. But my assumption would be it would work how it did in the original Diablo 2, and that there were ladder only items, and then when the ladder ended, they would get flushed into the non-ladder realm. I mentioned here there will be a stream, so I'm hoping to find out more on that stream tomorrow. Lastly, they're monitoring discussion around ladder rank play in the community. The duration of the ladder is an element our team is still trying to gauge. So what they're talking about here is how long the ladder season will be. They're thinking 4 months right now, which I think is a good compromise. I think, if memory serves me right, it's gone from 3 months to 6 months. I think right now it's 6 months. I haven't done ladder in a couple of years now. But I'm really excited to get into the D2R ladder. I think 6 months is probably too long. You start to get burnt out and you want a new ladder season. I think 3 months is a little too short, especially for people with full-time jobs like I do. And 4 months is probably a good compromise. I think that's a good number. Okay, and now we get into kind of the meat and potatoes here, the class balance changes. This is probably the thing that I'm most excited about. And I've talked a lot about, some minor changes I would like to see on the channel. I've got, I don't know, more than 50 videos showing different high-level characters and builds. And I played through a lot of meta builds, I played through a lot of meme builds, I played through a lot of mediocre builds. And I think there are some lower-end builds, while they are technically feasible and playable, they could use some minor touches here or there to actually make them fun and more comparable to kind of like the middle range builds. I don't think every build needs to be as good as Blessed Hammer. It doesn't have to be, top tier, but I think some more build diversity would help this game. And I know that's sacrilege to some people. Making any changes is just breaking the game, but I do think that there are some minor changes that could be made to the weaker builds, either through skill balancing synergies or through new items, that would make the game better, in my opinion. Diablo 2 is still my favorite action RPG of all time. It doesn't mean that there are a few things that they could make better. That's my opinion. So I'm just going to quickly go through this, and that's why I have Icy Veins up here with the skill calcs, just so we can kind of visualize what they're talking about and maybe talk about the skills in a little more detail. So the Amazon agility and versatility are profound. Generally, we like the current state of the Amazon class and believe her to be quite balanced. Nonetheless, we see opportunities to improve the melee skills. Yep, that's kind of where I thought they'd go. We want to buff the strengths of certain underused melee skills such as Impale and Fend. Yep, totally could there we go. Impale and Fend. I've done a high-level Fendazon and also a Jabazon. They're not amazing. We're also looking into freeing up the synergy requirements for melee skills to give more skill point freedom for other possibilities. And I wonder if they mean removing some synergies but keeping the power level of certain skills, so that maybe you could invest more into the melee as like almost like a dual spec. That's one thing I like about the Sorceress class, is she's got a couple of skills like Frozen Orb that are pretty good, and even Firewall, even post-nerf, they're decent with just, 20 points in them. They're not probably your main skill, but they're a good secondary to let you deal with like immunities, and I think that could work with something like melee. Maybe you're able to do Lightning Fury, and then to deal with the lightning immunes, you'd have a backup in your melee skill tree. Just a thought. They also mentioned here about buffing certain skills on the bow and crossbow skill tree. I did a recent video on a very high level, very high geared out Boazon, and even with like the most ridiculous gear in the game, it's still like kind of mediocre. Like it can do player 1 pretty well, but anything beyond that, it's kind of slow on it. I would love to see them remove the 25% damage reduction in multi-shot, though when they say certain skills, I don't know if that's what they mean, because even with that 25% reduction, this is one of the most used skills. So I'm not completely sure what they mean. I mean, there are some builds based around the Ice Maiden. You got people running Exploding Arrow at times. But they could use a light touch here. I don't think they want to go overboard, and you could have Boazons being, way overpowered like they were in Classic before LOD came out, but I think a light touch could definitely help that tree as well. Now we're going to go to Assassin. Assassin vanquishes evil from the darkness with great ease. However, this class is the opportunity for the martial arts builds to shine brighter. became increasingly challenging to perform in higher difficulties, which is very true. They are probably one of the weaker in the higher difficulty levels. And there's also a high, I think, skill ceiling. They mentioned that here, improving generating and spending combo points. This is probably the tree I have messed around with the least, at least how it's intended. You know, I've done kicksins, I've done riffsins, but the actual martial arts tree, I'm just not very good at it. I I don't know. I always mess up the timing on the combo points and finishers, and it's probably because I just haven't put enough time into it, but it's also because it's not that powerful, even when you know what you're doing. There are people that have made it work, and will probably say I'm wrong, but I think it could use a little bit of work. And if they want to rework how some of those generating and spending of points work, and it's an improvement, I'm all for that. And then furthermore, various trap skills are not often used, or reevaluating synergy requirements for remote war trap builds. So I'm assuming this might be, your blade tree over here, and maybe even fire. Fire is really, really good for leveling up. It's probably my favorite actual build for leveling. But when you get into a high end, and I've done some video comparisons of a high end lightning and a high end fire assassin, fire just doesn't compare. Lightning is just, it's amazing. But it does require a lot of points. I wonder if maybe they could take out some synergies to let you play around here more. I'm not sure completely what they mean about reevaluating synergies. Like maybe they could leave Lightning Sentry damage about where it is, but take one of those synergies out, and that would let you cross-synergize in another tree. But I have a feeling they may not touch Lightning at all, just because it's already really amazing. And it'll be all about increasing fire, or more particularly the blade tree. Barbarian. The brawn of the Barbarian is unmatched, and nonetheless, we see opportunities to add more diversity to combat skills. We're looking into adding more possibilities with combats like Leap Attack or Grim Ward. Has anyone ever used Grim Ward? Like, I think I tried it when the game first came out, and I'm like, I don't think it did anything. And, yeah, they could totally add a ton to it. What does Grim Ward use on corpse of a slain monster to create a frightening totem that causes nearby monsters to flee? Which is something you really don't want to have happen, because you're a melee character. Why would you want them to flee? I think they should turn it into some kind of buff. Maybe like you drop a totem on a corpse and it gives you like an aura or something. I don't know. They definitely could rework Grim Ward, and I would not be sad. Terrible skill. While also revaluing skill synergy requirements to promote reasons to spend points on certain combat skills. I kind of hope they reevaluate synergies in general. They've really dictated the builds to such a degree. You have to spend, for some of these builds, 90, 100 points to make your build work, and it doesn't let you really diversify at all. If you want to be a lightning trap assassin, you're spending 100 points in lightning. So Leap Attack, it's still, unless they make it somehow more AoE, I just don't see, even if they buffed it really, really hard, how it could work, except maybe as like a boss killer. But then, you're limited by attack speed. I'm curious how they improve Leap Attack. I would love to see it work. I just, my imagination can't figure out how they're going to do it. Additionally, Throw Barbarians could be more viable. Throw Barbarians aren't too bad. I mean, you can make Throw Barbarian that can take on Ubers. So they need to be careful there. They could end up buffing them almost too much without much effort, at least on the high end. When you get really, really well geared. But maybe some light touches could make it a fun build for like the lower end of gear. Druids. The bestial ferocity of Druids makes all tremble. With that said, we see exciting opportunities to level up certain aspects. From our perspective, Druid fire skills are underperforming. Oh, hell yeah they are. We're reevaluating casting delays, thank God. Exploring improvements to some of the physical damage components, very nice, and improving synergies. So the problem with Elemental is, I think every single skill here has a cooldown. And the way cooldowns work is you fire one off, and then all of the others are on cooldown. So there's a few, Windy Druid is quite good, but they're basically using one or two skills, depending on what they're facing. I would love to see them decouple a lot of these skills from the cooldown so that you could run, you know, your hurricane, but you could still have something to cast in the time between then. So yeah, definitely excited about that. Not that windy druids really need much work, but the fire tree and adding a bit more physical damage to some of these, that would make sense as well. Good improvement. We're also looking at potential tweaks to other elemental skills. We want to improve the controls for Arctic Blast. Okay, you're gonna have to do more than that, but yeah, that's a start. Such as allowing more freeform while channeling. Yep. Regarding summon skills, we believe summon are weak. You are correct. On this front, we're evaluating health gains per level, quality of life, damage output, new synergies. Yeah, so I did a video not too long ago with a high level summon druid. Even with really, really crazy gear, I think I had like level 45 on all of my summons. They're pretty slow in hell difficulty, even player 1 hell difficulty. I would love to see them make some changes, maybe allow a wolf and a bear out at the same time, maybe increase the damage considerably. Creepers could use some work too. They're rarely used. You could increase poison creepers damage by 10, and it probably would still not be that great. Oak Sage, great. Heart of the Wolverine, pretty great. Not much reason to use Spirit of Barbs. They could touch that up. I would think that would be a good place to start too. But doing something with this middle tree in particular, maybe letting you use all of them, or maybe a bear and a wolf together would be my thought, and then increasing the damage through more synergies. Good start. Lastly, improvements to Werebear. Okay. I think the only Werebear build that is used regularly is Fireclaws, or does anyone actually use Maul? I think it's mostly Fireclaw that people use. But definitely I could see that needing a little bit of an upgrade. Necro, this is one they need to be a little careful with, I think. Commander of Death sends his foes to an early grave. Like the Amazon, we like the current state. Nonetheless, we see an opportunity to improve specific summons we believe are underused. We're balancing elemental damage of skeletal mages and making lesser used golems more effective. So here's where you could run into a little bit of trouble, because right now, you know, Re-Skeleton's pretty good. You can go 20 Re-Skeleton, 20 Skeleton Mastery, 1 and everything else. Corpse Explosion, you got a pretty awesome build. And then you pick your curse, you know, probably amp damage, probably run with Decrepify. And then if you throw in, and when you're done with that, you still have like 40 points left over that you can play around with. You could go into your Poison and Bone tree to some extent while still being pretty awesome. If they increase Re-Skeleton too much, I wonder if it might make that summon Necromancer even that much better. Like, it's already a pretty decent build. And especially with the improvements they've already had to the AI on summons, how they teleport to you and follow you better. Though I haven't played one since those changes, so I can't speak too much to them. I'm curious if we could see the Necromancer have a pretty big improvement, even through some minor changes like that. And then lesser used golems. I would assume that probably means like Blood Golem. Hardly anyone uses that. Clay Golem's nice for the slowing effect. Fire Golem's decent in PvP. Iron Golem is great for meme builds where you've got, you know, Pride Iron Golems, but otherwise it's not too widely used. But yeah, I'm interested. When Ladder comes out, actually my plan was to make a Necromancer, a hardcore Ladder Necromancer, and I was already going to probably go summon with Corpse Explosion, and if I could throw some Re-Skeletons in there, or even Re-Skeleton Mage instead of just skeletons, that'd be cool. We'll see. Paladin. The Wrath of the Holy Zealot is glorious. Despite this, we believe certain combat skills are underused. We're exploring ways to make lesser used skills, i.e. Fist of the Heavens. That was the first one that came to mind. I did a video with a high-level Fister. Is that the right terminology? It sounds wrong. And it's not great. It's decent for PvP is my understanding. It's a single target spell. And while you can get it high enough that you one-shot just about anything in the game, you're still shooting one enemy at a time. So it's got its limitations. Players have more reason to spend skill points to unlock these skills. I don't know what they could do. Like, it's already one-shotting almost anything. Maybe it's got a pretty bad cast delay. Maybe make you able to cast it quicker. But unless they add some kind of limited AoE to it, I'm curious what they come up with. And it's hard, if they pump that skill too much, it could become too good in PvP. So they have to be careful because, there's this huge PvP scene. I'm not part of it, but I observe it and I'm interested in it. And I would hate to see them break something for PvPers. Because you can, name lock and Fist of the Heavens is pretty good in that case. We'll see opportunity to scale offensive auras as well. And I think when they say offensive aura skills, this includes making improvements to AoE damage auras. So I'm thinking they mean Holy Fire, Holy Freeze, and Holy Shock, which improvements to AoE damage to make them more effective at close range. I'm assuming they mean the pulse damage at close range. Though it's hard to know with that parsing that line there. But Tesladin is already maybe the best melee paladin in my opinion. It's very, very high end to get the 2 pieces of Dream, but if they scaled that even more, you could see some crazy things. I hope they keep that in mind. I would love to see the pulse damage go up a bit. Right now, most of the damage is from the additional damage to your attack on these skills. So I'm curious about that. I could see needing to be very careful with these changes. It would be very easy to make like Holy Shock in particular overpowered, as it's already a pretty good skill. And actually I made a fire ranger recently with Holy Fire, and it was doing cows in hell difficulty pretty well, so a little more damage I wouldn't complain about. Sorceress. Thorns, last point. Yeah, who's ever used Thorns? So, yeah, totally. Rethink Thorns. I don't know. Oh, is this bugged? It's not... Oh, there it goes. I gotta click off of it. 1000% damage at level 20. I think you'd have to increase that substantially to make it really usable. And even then, you want to make a build that's all about you getting punched in the face to kill your enemies? Not really. So, curious how they make that work. And then we got Sorceress. This is the class that I probably have the most knowledge on. I've run Sorceress a lot over the years. There's no greater master of elemental magic than these mages. We're satisfied with the Sorceress as a current state, but we see a few opportunities for improvements. Regarding cold skills, we believe we can make more diversity with the armor skills. Yeah, I would like to see them add some more unique properties to these. Like, most people just put 1 point so that they're not having to go all the way down the tree. So adding something to differentiate these a little further, like maybe make one of them the one that gives the most armor. Maybe make one of them... let's see if I max these. Yeah, like right now, 125%, 159, 140. So like maybe you could make one that gives way more armor. You could have one that does something else. Maybe gives you resistance instead of armor. Giving them some kind of unique property to differentiate them more, I think would be cool. I still don't think people would max it, but maybe. We're looking into adding more possibilities around lesser used lightning skills. Totally think that means probably Nova and maybe Thunderstorm, and maybe to a lesser extent Charge Bolt. Charge Bolt's actually pretty decent with good gear. It's a good boss killer, so probably not. I'm guessing it's probably Nova that they're talking about. Because there's no synergies. Nova used to be really, really good when Diablo 2 first came out, and then when they added synergies, they did not add one for Nova, and no one used Nova. So it's very hard to make work these days. You can get through the game, it's kind of slow and painful, because you're doing kind of minuscule damage, and you have to be right on top of the enemies to make use of it. So I'd really like to see Nova, I've mentioned this before, improved a little bit. And Thunderstorm would be my other thought that they might touch up. But again, that could have repercussions in PvP. Depends on how high they scale it. because it's an ability you basically just teleport on someone and let the thunderstorm kill them. I could see that being problematic if it's very, very high, though there's ways to mitigate that through absorb and things like that, so hard to know. Lastly, we also want to revisit fire to improve underused skills like Hydra, and then also Inferno. They're doing the same thing as Arctic Blast, which I still don't think is enough. Like, even if they made Inferno control much better, that's not totally the problem with Inferno. Hydra is one of my favorite skills in the game. It just doesn't hold up so well in hell difficulty. The first character I made, actually, when LOD released, 20 years ago, was a Hydra source, because they made a lot of changes with the expansion, and I wanted to make it work. And I played through the whole game with Hydra, and I didn't respect that character. That was before they had respects in the game, and that was my main character for a long time. And I was able to beat the whole game with it. I did, player 1 pretty easily. Player 8, it doesn't really scale so well with. It's really good for single targets. It's not good for multiple targets. And I think the Assassin and the Lightning Trap tree is just a better Hydra. I would love to see them make some changes. There's a couple ways they could go about this. Increase the damage, make it like the best single target, trap type skill. They could remove the cooldown. I think that would be a big improvement, but still limit maybe to 5 total Hydras. Part of the problem right now is this game is all about movement and getting through areas as quick as possible. And if it takes you 7 seconds to set up your damage, that's no go. So removing the cooldown and letting you drop them all real quickly and move and drop them all, that would be a good alternative. Maybe adding some kind of pierce or some kind of explosion to it. Maybe instead of fire bolts, they shot fireballs. That alone, I think, that might make it too good. Have to scale the damage, but something like that would definitely make it more usable and closer to the power of the assassin. So that's my thought. They could also, I think, touch up like Firebolt and Ice Bolt. They have no real identity to them. Like, even with all synergies, Firebolt is just a low damage fireball with no AoE capabilities. Same thing, Ice Bolt is basically Ice Blast, except it doesn't freeze and it does less damage. Like, there's no reason for these two skills to exist. I would like to see these first tier maybe be the highest single target, and then this would be your AoE, and this would be kind of the same thing but with freezing, so it would do a little bit less damage, and then here's your AoE that does less. But Firebolt and Ice Bolt, there is no reason to use them, invest in them. There's no point that they're ever better than corresponding skills. So I think Firebolt, Ice Bolt, Inferno, Frost Nova, Hydra are great targets for some improvement. Nova and Thunderstorm as well. Charge Bolt's okay. I don't know that it needs much. You could make that overpower without too much effort. So that's my thoughts on what they're talking about right now. I've spoke a lot about these characters during my playthroughs, and a lot of what they mention here is thoughts I've already had, so it's great to see that we're on the same page. Mercenary changes and new Runewords. We're not done. Class balance changes aren't the only update players want to see. We've seen a lot of feedback from the community around mercenaries, and we're making improvements. Many players enjoy using desert mercenaries. Yep, and we want to give more reason to use the other 3. So we're looking into improving their skills and stats to enhance their identity. When they say improving their skills, I wonder if that could be new skills. My thought would be, what if you gave an aura type ability to each of the act mercenaries? Like barbarians, throw them a war cry. I don't know about battle orders, just because that would piss off everyone who's got CTA and kind of invalidate the reason for even having a barbarian. But you could give them, like shout or something. Give them something that would help you more. Hey, if you rework Grim Dawn, Grim Ward, give them Grim Ward. That'd be cool. Increase their damage. Maybe give them some AoE. Give the Barbarian Whirlwind. Give the Act 1 Mercenary multi-shot. Like, they're not going to be clearing the screen, but, giving them a level 5 multi-shot would be cool to see. So I think giving them some new abilities, and then also, and this comes up down below, they're going to be adding in new Heraldric Cube recipes, set item changes, and rune words. So there's going to be recipes, for example, that allow you to upgrade set items, which is cool. It should give you some new item possibilities. set item changes will also update underperforming sets. There are so many sets that no one uses, so I think that's a cool change. I think Runewords are so vastly overpowered compared to sets and uniques in most cases that sets just get overlooked. And I don't think the sets need to be as good as Runewords, but it would be very cool if there were more side items and unique items that powered kind of off-meta builds, that empowered skills that are less used. I think that would be very, very cool. And they talk about giving set items more bonuses and giving more incentive to pursue partial and full set bonuses. So what if they made the partial bonuses a little bit better? We're getting a little close to D3 territory there, where they have like 3 tiers of bonuses, and like that middle tier can sometimes be crazy. And I worry that this game could easily become more D3, where it's only set items all the time. Like, I don't want to see them put in set bonuses that are like, on every cast a meteor, like like the wizard set in Diablo 3, and then at the top tier it's like every time you cast, all your damage is 400%. Like the percentages in Diablo 3 get ridiculous. I don't want to see that, but giving some more incentive to run a 3-piece. There are some of that in the game right now, like Talrash's 3-piece is quite nice. I would like to see more things like that. And then lastly, new runewords will be added to complement the skill and mercenary changes. I love that. So the runewords are going to be targeted around some of the skill changes and along the lines of some of the mercenary changes. So what if they added like a 2-handed sword for your Act 5 merc that gave an aura? What if they added, some new bows other than Faith that would give you some decent auras? I'm not even talking about giving them the highest stuff in the game, but give them something unique. That would be very, very cool. There's some auras that you don't see on items too often that I would like to see. Maybe give resistance auras. Maybe give vigor. Imagine like your barbarian that gives you vigor and you get free movement speed. There's different things that they could be doing, I think, through itemization as well as the skill changes to the mercs. And then tomorrow you got your stream, so I'm hoping we find out more tomorrow. I have a feeling that that stream tomorrow is going to be more about the philosophical changes, the reason behind the changes, and some of their plans. I don't know if we're going to see, the actual skill numbers tomorrow and the actual item changes. We might see a few. They hint that we're going to see some of the rune words tomorrow. That would be cool. But I have a feeling we'll find out more when the PTR actually goes up. So those are my thoughts. I'm very excited about this. I know some people are scared that they're going to turn this into Diablo 3 and ruin the game, but I think Vicarious Vision, now Blizzard, I guess, they've done a pretty good job with D2R. There have been problems, there have been growing pains, but I think the underlying game has been quite good. If you were playing single player, I don't think you would have run into many problems actually since release. It's mostly been network related issues with the high amount of players, and those have mostly subsided either through fixes they've done or because people have stopped playing. I'm not sure, but at the moment it's definitely improved substantially, and I'm excited to see what they can come up with. So I'll definitely be playing on the PTR and doing some coverage of the PTR when it's released. I'm going to end it here. If you've got any thoughts on this, definitely drop me a line below. I appreciate you watching, and have a good night, everyone.